maybe, thank you. I wanted to say that we have now started recording, and anything we say after this can be used against you in the court of law. Okay, right. So I'll start by defining a program. A program refers to a set of instructions we provide for the computer to give an output. We have the computer, and basically a computer does a few things. First, it accepts inputs, then it manipulates the inputs, and then it gives the output and also store information. But all this, the computer must be told on how to do it. Whatever instruction that is given or provided to a computer so that it is able to do all these things that it does is what we call a program. It tells a computer what to do. It tells the computer, like, now get input, now store this information, manipulate this information in this manner, now produce output or take it back to storage. That is a program. It is just a set of instructions that we provide for the computer to give an output. Sorry. Trying to. Now, programming is now the process of writing such computer program. Remember, for you to tell the computer what to do, that means you must have a program. And for you to have a program, you do what we are calling programming. So programming refers to the process of writing a program that will tell the computer what to do. Note that the words program, programming, and coding are always used interchangeably in a broader sense. So you will find that people who are saying, I'm coding, or I'm writing a program, or I'm programming. So these words are basically just used interchangeably, and people use them the way they want. So whenever you find somebody saying, I'm coding, I'm programming, or writing a program, then you should just understand whatever this person is talking about. Then now we come to a programming language. A programming language is a formal language which we use to write programs for the computer. It is basically just a language, like I'm right now speaking in English. I can speak Swahili, I can speak my mother tongue, and I know all of us have different languages that we speak. So the language that we use in writing these programs is what we are calling a programming language. And there are so many such programming languages in the world. There are so many, so many, so many. A programming language acts as a translator between you and the computer. Remember, computers are machines. Machines never speak in human language. Machines speak in machine language. They speak in the language of the wires. We just connect the wires and the ports, and then they communicate. So the computer will just understand that language, but then a programming language will allow us to be able to communicate what we want to the computer, and then there will be something that will translate it in a machine language, and then if we want to get the output through the programming language, it again will be translated to us in a human language. Therefore, a programming language acts as a translator between me, and the computer. Programming languages, as I've said, are so many, but these are some of the most common programming languages that maybe people use. There are several others. There are so many, that if we start listing them, they will grow, the list will be so much. So we have C, we have C++, we have C#, we have Java, we have Python that we are going to learn, or we are starting to learn today. So all these are just programming languages. So now that we are learning Python, our mind now goes to the fact that we just want to write a language, or we just want to write a program. And so we are using Python as a programming language to write a program that will help us to maybe instruct a computer on what to do and what not to do. So we would start by asking ourselves, what is Python? What is Python? As it is written, Python is a popular programming language. It was created by somebody called Guido van Rossum and released in 1991. So the first release of Python was in 1991. It is used for so many things. Other people use it for web development, software development, mathematics, script writing, data science, analysis, so many things. What can Python do? Python can be used on a server to create web applications. Python can be used alongside software to create workflows. Python can connect to database systems. It can also read and modify files. Python can be used to handle big data and perform complex mathematics. Python can be used for rapid prototyping or for production-ready software development. Then again, we would ask ourselves, why Python then? Why not use C? Why not use C#? Why not C++? Why would some people decide to prefer Python? Why do some people would prefer Python? Python, first of all, it works on different platforms. Kindly, if you are not talking to us, you can mute. If you see me keep quiet, it means I'm trying to mute others so that we have a clean background, or I'm sending you that I'm asking you to mute so that you can just mute and then the class will be, the class will be okay. So Python works on different platforms. If you have Windows, you just install Python and you're good to go. Mac, Linux, Raspberry Pi, etc. Any environment, Python will work in different environments. Then Python has a very simple syntax, just similar to English language. When I mention syntax, I mention like the rules of a language. If I'm speaking in English, I speak grammar. So there are things like objects, there are things like noun, verb, adverb, and there is how you need to work with them so that when I complete my sentence, I have to put a full stop. When I'm asking a question, I put a question mark. And after the question mark or after the full stop, my next letter must begin in capital letter. Those are English syntax, and I must obey them. Every time I am speaking, every time I am writing, I must obey them. Every programming language also comes with its rules, like the language syntax. And that is what we are saying, that Python has a very simple syntax that is just as similar to English in a way, so that if you know English, you're good to go. Python has syntax that allows developers to write program with fewer lines of code. I will show you immediately. We start maybe like printing a Python program that is able to print the word hello world. Maybe I will give you a comparison between the way C or C++ would print hello world on the screen and the way Python would print hello world on the screen. And from that, you will realize that it has very few lines when you're working with Python. Python runs on an interpreter system. So let me just, I'll try to maybe write a little thing here. And I believe we will be able to see. So I'm talking of interpreter. You're able to see?
Yes,
Somebody can unmute. Thank you.
Yes, we are able to see.
Thank you. I'll be trying to talk to you so that I know whether I'm in the class alone or I'm still with people. So I'm talking about interpreter, and there is also something we call a compiler. We are saying that a Python program is run on an interpreter, meaning that the code can be executed as soon as it is written. This means that prototyping can be very quick. So what do I mean when I am talking about an interpreter? Most of us go to churches or functions where there is an interpreter. Perhaps somebody is speaking in English and another person is interpreting in Kiswahili. So what happens is that I'll try and do that. If I am interpreting for somebody preaching in English, then that person will say, praise God. And then immediately I will say, praise God in Kiswahili is Sifu Mungu. Oh yeah. So somebody says praise God, and then I say Sifu Mungu. So it talks and I interpret. It talks and I interpret. So we go like line by line. After a line of code, the interpreter will interpret it. Why it is being interpreted is because I had said earlier that our machines only understand machine language. I've also said that Python is written in a language that is almost English-like. And so computers do not understand these high languages that are English-like. So every time I type a Python code in a line, there is another program that is called interpreter that takes that line, then translates it in machine language so that it is worked on, and then the machine now will understand it. And then it will also interpret it back so that I see the way it is working. I see my output, I see if I have errors, and I see all that. So Python works under interpreter, and the interpretation is done line by line. Other languages like C, Java, they work with what we call a compiler. The difference between a compiler and an interpreter is that the compiler will take the old source code. A source code is the code that you have typed. That code that is in English-like language, your Python code, it's called a source code. It will take the whole of it from the beginning to the end, then it will translate it at once. So it compiles, it like changes it into an object code just at once. So working with an interpreter language is easier because it goes line by line. If there is a problem in a certain line, it doesn't allow you to go to the next line, and it is easier even now to get your errors, and it is also faster when it works like that. So again, Python can be treated in a procedural way, and it is and also an object-oriented way, or a functional way. So you can have little small functions, procedures, or just object-oriented. These ones we will understand as time goes, because we will get to know what is a function, what are objects, why do we say a programming language is object-oriented or procedural or functional. So those ones we will see in the future, so that we don't start explaining everything just at the beginning.
One thing I didn't get you to do was okay.
Somebody is still talking. So it is good to know that the most recent major version of Python is Python 3. I remember when I was telling us to install, I said that we install Python 3, which we shall be using in this tutorial. However, Python 2, although not being updated with anything other than security updates, is still quite popular. People are still using it. And those who started with Python 2, maybe some are afraid to just upgrade. It happens. Like even with Windows, there are people who insist that 2 or 3 and all that is what they love, and they are not upgrading. So also Python, there are people who are still using Python 2, but the upgrading is not being worked on apart from the security issues. In this tutorial, Python will be written in a text editor. It is possible to write Python in an IDE, such as Thorny, PyCharm, Jupyter Notebook. I actually had informed us to install any IDE that we want to work with and we love working with, because people love working with different IDEs. I will most of the time be using Google Colab, and I will also be using Jupyter Notebook. For the purposes of just sharing the code, I'll be using Google Colab, because then I can just share to your emails and you work on it, and then we work like we are in a collaboration, which will be good. What is Python syntax when we compare it to other programming languages? Python was designed for readability and has some similarities to the English language, with influence from mathematics. Python uses new lines to complete a command, as opposed to other programming languages, which often use semicolons or parentheses. So if like you have worked with C or C++ or Java or just most programming languages, you will realize that at the end of every line, you must put a semicolon to show that the line ends here, the line begins here. There are also parentheses that you use to show that this block of code begins here and ends here. Python do not have such. You just write freestyle and you will see, maybe with a little indentations. Python rely on indentation using white space to define scope, such as the scope of loops, functions, and classes. Other programming languages, like the ones I've said, use it differently. So example of a Python code. If I am writing a Python code to print the word hello world, this will be the code, just like this. I'll just say print hello world and I'll be good to go. But if I was to use maybe C, for me to print hello world in C, maybe I'll write something like hash include, then I put standard input output .h, then I come down, then I say main. I've not even started printing hello world, and then I'll still be just defining it, and then I go like that. I just want to print hello world in C, and then I will say printf, and then I say hello world, and then sometimes I may still even say return 0. Don't know why I'm returning it. Let me not return, because I just said, okay, I actually have to return unless I said void main. So here I have to say return 0, and then there has to be a semicolon here, and then a semicolon here, and then I end. So if I am writing in C, I believe this will work. If I'm writing in C, is somebody talking? kindly mute if you want to talk and it is not part of the class. Just mute so that we don't have background noise on our recording. Thank you. I wanted to mute you anyway. So if I'm writing in C, the whole of this code that I've written here will simply do what this code in Python does. So you get the difference. Imagine all the hash include the main, the whole story up to return 0, hello world. We'll just do what this print hello world does. So Python is very light. It doesn't have all those crazy stuff. It is to the point, very few lines, and you're doing magic. And I think with that, I want to maybe explain a few things on Jupyter Notebook, because that is the IDE that we'll be using. Any question up to there? Any question? Silence means we are good. So that's okay. So I'll open Jupyter Notebook and then just explain a few things, because this is the IDE that we will be using. So for those who installed Anaconda, once you install Anaconda, Anaconda will be looking like this. Let me clear this drawing. Okay. Anaconda will give you this environment. Once it gives you this environment, you will pick on Jupyter Notebook and then you just launch it. Once you launch it, it will give you a screen that looks almost like this one. This I had opened. I'm waiting for that to launch, but I think we can continue. So with this, with this kind of environment, there are a number of things that you need to note. We have just a little bit and it will be opened. You get to a place like this. And then once you get to a place like this, you have this menu. So the menu: file, edit, view, insert cell, kernel, widgets, and then help. And then we have all this. For now, you need to know that when you click on that plus, okay, what's going on? My laptop has a memory that is getting so old. Sorry for that. It's loading. Good. So we will have a place to type in, and this is what we refer to as a shell. So if I am to write my Python code, I will write it inside a shell. Normally, I don't need to save my work, because in Jupyter Notebook, it will be saving, but you need to give it a name that you will remember as you work. So for this, if I am to write my code, I'll just type here print. You realize that the word print has changed in blue, or that is green. And then in bracket, I'll say print hello world. Print hello world. And then if I run it, it prints for me hello world. I left D, so I can run it again. It will print for me hello world. If I want to maybe write a program to add two numbers, I'll just say, for example, 5 plus 2. And then I just click run, and it will give me the result as 7. If I want to maybe subtract two numbers, I would say 10 minus 2, and it will give me 8. So looking at the way this works and the way I would explain for you the way C would work, or the way I would explain, Java is a bit even more crazier than C or C++, because it will include so many things, and you will be asking yourself, was I just to use all these things to add 5 plus 2? So Python is just so simple. It's like I'm doing English. I'm just writing 5 plus 2, I get 7. 10 minus 2, I get 8. And then I just print, if it is words that I'm printing, then I quote them. I put them in quotes, and then I say our first Python class. And then I just run it, and it gives me our first Python class. So it prints for me that on the screen. So basically, this makes us know that we are going to work with a programming language that is very, very easy. Now, when we are talking about syntax, because now I got to introduce syntax. So I got to introduce syntax. I had said that syntax are rules that govern a language. They tell you that don't do this, don't do this, do this, do this, put this, put this. In Python, we use, first of all, what we call indentation. So indentation, we will see more of it by the time we will start writing Python code that maybe wants us to do some selection or branching. And then, or maybe when we want to use loops or iteration, as we are going to see in the future, in the near future. So Python will use indentation to show a block of code, so that if I am having maybe a code like this, if I'm having a code here, maybe I would say if, and then I give some condition. I don't want to explain that, but I'll just give it as an example. I give a condition, and then now you see, because this is an IDE even helps me already. So you realize that whatever I'm now typing is indented. It is indented, and if that block of if is over, I'll just go back and start again. So maybe I can say while, and then I give another condition. The moment I put a full colon, it will indent. So that indentation simply tells us that the block that is inside here is under this condition. The block that is inside here is under this condition. So that is a syntax. That is a syntax of Python. So Python will just use the white spaces and indentation. And you can see when I was adding 5 plus 2, I gave just the white space. I would decide to do it like this. then I run it, it will give me 7. But for beauty, for understanding, Python allows you to put spaces so that it works. When you are doing indentation, we normally say that you jump 4 steps. So like you go 1, 2, 3, 4. They have to be 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You remember it gave me, but now if I'm typing, I am typing like 4 spaces. So that's how we do indentation, so that it gives us that. And then another thing that we need to know is, again, how do we do the namings? Identifiers. That's another thing that, again, we need to do. Whenever I say 5 plus 2, that is very direct. I am talking about 5 plus 2, and I'm adding it to 7. But what if in daily life, in programming, I will not just be putting 5 plus 2? What is 5? What is 2? That is the question. What is 5? What is 2? 5 could be somebody's age. 5 could be somebody's class marks. 5 could be somebody's salary. 5 could be anything. So those things that we are saying could be anything, we need to create a memory for them, so that when we type it, it goes into that memory. And those memories, normally we call them variables. So before we give the memories, we give the values that should be stored in those variables, which are memories. We give those values, we give the container that hold those values a name. That name is what we are calling identifier. Whenever we are giving identifiers, there are rules that we must obey. You don't just start giving names. First of all, before you give a name, you should always know that the name you want to give must have only letters or numbers and an underscore. Underscore. How do we write underscore? And underscore. So you can't have an identifier that is just numbers. It must have letters. It can be an underscore, it can be letters, it can be numbers, but it begins with a letter or an underscore. For example, I can say name, I can say name, I can say name 4, I can say x3, I can say, but I can't say 4x, I can't say 3x. That one is wrong. So it has to begin with that. I can also say first, maybe name. So you are free to give any name that you want, provided the name only contains letters, numbers, and underscore. And it begins with a letter or an underscore. It should not begin with a number. Number 2, when you're giving these identifiers, rule 2, it should not be a keyword. Now, what is a keyword? A keyword are words whose meaning are already known to the interpreter. So they are preserved. Their meaning is preserved. For instance, if I say print, you see print is printed in green. If I just change it to capital, if I just change it to capital P, it will be black. And if I run that code, there will be an error. And the error will be telling me name print is not defined, meaning the other print was defined, but this print that is having capital P is not known to the machine. The interpreter has tried to interpret it, does not understand it because it is not known. The moment I return it to small p, it runs. Because now this print, it is known. If I remove this, the brackets and run it, I'll get an error telling me invalid syntax. Why? Because I'm using print. Print is a keyword, and because it is a keyword, there is a defined way of how I need to use it. If I must use it, I must put those brackets. That is when it will allow me to use it, because its meaning is already known to the computer. So that is what we are calling keyword. Keywords are so many. I will send them to our group. So there are so many keywords, and these keywords, we are not supposed to use them as our identifiers. You realize that if is in green, while is in green, all these that are in green, like if, like while, I can't use them as my identifiers because their meaning is already known. So rule 2, when working with identifiers, is that we do not use something that is a keyword. It is also good to note that when Python is case sensitive, meaning capital letters and small letters are not the same. So if you've just seen the moment I put a capital P, I got an error because Python did not understand it. But the moment I return it back to small p, it works. So capital letters and small letters in Python are very different. If you give your identifier a name like A, you cannot use it as capital A. It will bring an error. It will tell you that that is not defined. Whenever you're giving your identifiers, try to give names that are relevant. If you're talking of marks of students, and these students did an exam, maybe in science, in English, in Kiswahili, then you need to write them as maybe Kiswahili, English, maths, rather than calling your identifiers A, B, C, when you're dealing with maybe salaries, maybe ages. Try to give a variable name or an identifier that is relevant. So why was I giving all that lecture on maybe variables? It's because it is in order that we learn this. I want to give something here. I want to call it a memory. So I've said that these memories I'm calling variables. Let me assume that that is the variable that I wanted to write. So the computer's memory would be looking something like this. Computer works by remembering things, and to remember things, you must have a memory. So if the memory looks like this, and I want to store 5, maybe here, then I want to store 2, maybe here, and then after I add them, I want to store their result, maybe here. I want to call my 5A, I want to call my 2B, I want to call my sum, maybe just S or sum. The reason I am doing this is because I want that when I am writing program, in A, I can have 5, but even if it changes to be 10, it will still be stored in A. So A will be a memory location that will carry for me the values that I put in there at that time. It cannot carry 5 and another value. It only carries one value at a time. So that's why we call it a variable. Its value will keep changing as I change it. So let's see how I would work with that in Python. So I can say my A equals 5. So the explanation here is that the value 5 is assigned to memory location called A. That is how we interpret it. The value 5, there is a memory that we have called A, and we are assigning a value 5 into it. And then I am saying that another value B, I am assigning 2 to B, and then I am signing their sum. Sum just came in green. So let me say my sum equal, that means it is a keyword, so that's why it has come in green. So my sum equals A plus B. So then I can now print my sum. So if I run this, I'll get 7. These ones, A, B, and my sum are my identifiers. And they're the ones that I was explaining rules that govern them. So I have now, if A has changed to 10, I just change it and run it. If my B has changed to 30, I just change it and I run it, and it works like that. Any question? Somebody is playing music, or War Victor Ouma. Okay. Any question? Okay. If there are no question, I would ask us that we open our IDEs, and then we try a few things that I want to give, and then we call it a day and decide on which day we are meeting again. So maybe you open your IDE. And you let me know once you open, so that I don't wait for so long. Are we there with our computers?
Yes,
Bob, you
miss.
okay? Okay, okay. So once you open your IDE or your Python, maybe I want you to assign these values into any variable and then try and run it. So assign a name to a variable. You can have any name. It can be Lucy, it can be your name. Then also assign age. Then just print it out. So have name, maybe as Jane. Remember, if you are assigning, you're putting equal sign. Then age, maybe any age, 30. And then you just write print and print it out, and I see how you do it. And maybe I can stop sharing and then I'll allow one of you to share and then we see how you're going about it. So who want to share his screen? Hello? You know, if you don't share your screen, I wouldn't know if you're doing it. So at least one person has to share the screen. Who wants to share? Fatma.
Yes, Miss.
You can share your screen.
I'm using my laptop and the Zoom is on my phone. But
Oh.
okay, I'll try. I'll try starting my video.
We will still not see because we wanted you to share so that we see the way you're actually doing it. Lihanda? Fabius? Fabius?
Okay, I have the same scenario. I'm using my Zoom on the phone.
Oh, who is using his laptop and Zoom on laptop? Maybe next week we will try and have Zoom on our laptops. Gerald?
Lucy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I came in late. I'm following up.
Yes.
So I haven't done anything. I'm just following because I signed in late.
Okay. And then Ramadan?
Yes, madam. My case is the same as 5 years and 5 years.
Somebody is playing me. Somebody is playing me. GR? Who is GR? Okay, maybe let me share again and then I'll still ask you to guide me so that I know. Has anybody, by the way, tried to do it? This is what we were doing. We want to write a program that will allow us print a name and age. And we want to define or to have our name as age and age as variables. So what we do, we say name, and then because names are in letters. I wanted to say names are in English. Names are in letters. And if they're in letters, then we call them just any other character. So they are like a string. I'll talk about data types later so that we see what we mean when I say string, when I say number, when I say object and all that. Basically, names are string. A string is a sequence of many characters or more than one character. So that's a string, a sequence of characters. Whenever we are working with strings, we quote them. We put them inside quote. So I can say name equals Gerald. That means I am assigning the value Gerald to name. And then age is a number. Age is a number, so we don't quote numbers. We don't quote numbers. So I can say age is 20, and then I can just print. So I can print, when I'm printing, I can print name. I can also just print age. When I do that, I need to remove this. If I don't, they will bring error because that cell is active. So after I do this, I can just run it. So when I run it, it will print for me Gerald, and it will print for me 20. From here, I can make name as many letters as possible. So I can say Gerald. Gerald, what is your other name?
My second
Gerald
name is Nyakundi, Nyakundi.
I believe I can write Nyakundi.
You got it right.
Yes. So if I print that, it will just come. If I remove the quotes, let me try removing the quotes and I run it. Remember, age is okay because age printed. It printed earlier on when Gerald Nyakundi was quoted. But now it is not printing it because Python works using on an interpreter. So it will check on this, realize there is a problem here, and it will not even move to the next line. It will report that there is a problem, invalid syntax, the rule is disobeyed. So I have to come back and quote. I don't have to put double quotes. I can put single quote and it will still work. So you don't have to put the double quote. It can be single quote or double quote. But if I have the single quote at the beginning and I have double quote at the end, there will be a problem. It is telling me EOL, that it is end of line, while scanning string literal. There is a problem because I single quoted here and now I am double quoting here. So that's the way we are going to see errors as we start working. You will be seeing errors. You check on the error, it tells you like line 18 has a problem. Line 18 has a problem and the problem is somewhere here. So if you check down here, you see a power sign, this one, showing that there is a problem here. If the problem is at the beginning, let me see if it will tell me exactly where the problem is. Now it is seeing the problem somewhere here because there is a space between Gerald and Nyakundi. So it is thinking that the problem could be here or could be anywhere else. So that is how Python will be interpreting your work, getting your errors, reporting to you your errors, and you will be working on your errors. Remember, what is important is that you know, if it is string, you have to quote it, double quote or single quote, but it has to be uniform. If they are numbers, you don't have to quote them. I think that's fine. So you can try your own and then you let me see. I think that should be enough for introduction, so that in the next lesson, we talk about data types, we talk about variables, and we also talk about the operators that we will be working with. Still introduction, but very important, because if we are not introduced properly, we're going to have problems. So this is the laying of the foundation. I think that should be okay for the introduction today, unless we have questions.
Lucy,
Yes, Gerald.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are you the one who will be taking us through data analytics?
I'll be taking you through Python and machine learning. Then data analysis will be somebody else.
Okay, Python and machine learning, right?
Yeah, by Python and machine learning. Why did you ask? Or I don't need to ask?
Maybe I can inbox you.
Oh, yeah, sure. You sure. Just inbox me. I think that will be sensitive. That's fine. Thank you. You can inbox. Then, thank you. Thank you. Another question? Good. So, when do we meet? Do you love Sundays? Do we have it on Saturdays and Wednesday? Or do we have the lessons on Tuesdays and Wednesdays? Which days do you prefer? Majority will take the day.
Wednesday and Saturday. You said that's on the first time.
Yeah, Wednesday and Saturday for Fatima is okay. Wednesday and Sunday, I'm waiting to get another vote. Wednesday is already voted by 2.
Same time.
Same, but somebody is talking of Sunday and Saturday, so it can't be same. Maybe I also need to stop recording so that we don't record everything. Did I have the recording thing going on? Yeah.
Lucy, if I can ask,